Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. We're less than 24 hours away from fall camp starting, which means we're less than 24 hours away from football season officially starting. And I know that we're all very excited, but we're just going to get y'all primed and ready for fall camp tomorrow in today's video by going through each position group briefly. I'll tell you what my expectations are for that room in fall camp and also during the season, and who do I think will be the most productive player inside of each room. As always, y'all, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so we'll be starting off in the quarterback room today. I have everything broken down by class. As y'all can see, for example, Nico Iamaleava is actually a redshirt freshman. I have him up under sophomores because he's been in college for 2 years. So this is going to be his second year in school. And I did that for every single position group all the way through this video. So just keep that in mind. But we're definitely expecting for Nico to be the most productive player coming out of this room right here. He should have a very good season. Now, could it be like Hendon Hooker-esque? I think that it's possible. It just really all depends on how things kind of play out as far as offensive line, the wide receivers. Everything kind of has to line up perfectly for that to happen. But he's going to have the skill set for sure to do it. I think that he's the prototype quarterback that Coach Heupel wants for this offense. And at some point before he's done here at Tennessee, he will probably operate this offense at the highest level that we've ever seen. Now, as far as what I'm going to be looking for from Nico out in fall camp, I want for him to be on point. I want him to show that he has good command and understanding of this offense. He should have a really good rapport with his wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs. So hopefully, whenever we're running those option routes, he should know exactly where each individual player is going to be and where they like that football thrown. I think that he is going to, be that sort of a player. Also, I want to see him kind of moving around some as far as scrambling, because that is going to be a big part of his game, I believe, in the 2024 season. But obviously, you don't want him doing too much. You don't want him putting himself in harm's way. Everyone knows not to touch Nico out there at practice. If you touch him, you're probably going to run 5 or 6 miles. So I don't think that that's going to be an issue, but you definitely just want to see him stay clean, stay upright, stay healthy. And as far as the 2 backup guys, we've got Gaston Moore and we've got Jake Merkling. Jake Merkling being the true freshman. Gaston Moore has spent a lot of time inside of this offense. He's a redshirt senior, so he should be able to help these younger players come along. I'm definitely looking forward to that. And if he ever, has to get into a game, I think that he has some playmaking capabilities, but he's really more of a game manager. Also, I think that in game time situations, he's going to be one of the first people that Nico's going to talk to once he comes off of the sideline from series to series. And hopefully he's going to have some good notes and nuggets to help him, just kind of grow as he's going through the SEC. So that's going to be something for us to look forward to. And then, whenever you talk about Jake Merkling, I think he has a higher ceiling as far as a playmaker. How ready is he? I want to see him also show some command of this offense. And the last thing that I'll say, if Nico has to come off of the field, like with the helmet malfunction, something like that, I believe that Gaston Moore comes in. But knock on wood, God forbid, if for any reason Nico has to miss an extended period of time, at that point, I think that there could actually be a pretty close competition between Gaston Moore and Jake Merklinger, just because, again, Jake is the guy that's going to have a little bit more of an upside as a playmaker. But that also just kind of depends on how do the rest of the position groups look on this team. But let's move on to the next room right here. We have the defensive ends. And let's start off with the Leos, because everyone wants to talk about James Pierce. What am I expecting from him this season? Well, I believe last season he had 9.5 to 10 sacks, depending on what site you're looking at. I think that he could have more than that this season. And part of that, part of the reason for that is we should be playing in more games this year, so he'll have more opportunities to get or to make even more plays. But also, I think that this entire front is just so loaded. People always look at James Pierce only, but just do not forget that we've got a whole lot of guys that at some point this season, teams will say, hey, do we double team this person or is it James Pierce? And it's going to turn into a, huge, problem for them to get that figured out on when and where do you double team the players up front. But going on down the list inside of this Leo room, we got Joshua Josephs, who I think is going to have a really big year. I do expect for him to be even more productive than he was last season. He should be getting some more reps, but he's going to be in a position battle for second place at the Leo spot with Caleb Herring, who's now up to 250 pounds. And I believe Jordan Ross, who's a true freshman, he's also up to about 250 pounds at this point. So I'll say this really quickly about Caleb Herring and Jordan Ross. I could see them maybe getting cross-trained some at the strong side defensive end position. So I'm going to be looking out for that to see in fall camp, do we try to cross-train them? Because we've talked about that briefly before on this channel, that maybe the coaching staff is going out and targeting some guys that are a little bit more versatile and can do both. They can rush the passer, they can set that strong edge, but they can also kind of drop back in the pass coverage. I think we've got at least 3 guys on this team that can do all of that. So it'll be interesting just to see how much are we trying to get, ourselves prepared for being a little bit more versatile on defense. But yeah, that's going to be a great position battle. Do not sleep on Jordan Ross. I still think that he could end up being the second most productive pass rusher inside of that Leo room. But we also have the strong side defensive ends. That's another very, very deep room. We got Dominic Bailey, we got Tyree West, Jason Jenkins, Tyree Weathersby. Who's going to win it out right there? Okay, I have absolutely no idea, but that's definitely one to watch. Now let's talk about some more of these freshmen. Kellen Lindstrom, I'm definitely expecting for him to kind of build off of what he showed in spring practice. I was very impressed with what I saw from him. He's also about 6'5", 250-ish pounds. So can he work himself up into the rotation at the strong side defensive end spot? Also, you've got Carson Gentle, this is going to be our first time really seeing him play, but I think that he could show us a whole lot as well. I don't know how much he weighs. He might be, around that same size. I think he's closer to about 6'3", but he's got a really high motor. So looking forward to that. Also, Emmanuel Okoye, how much does he come along in fall camp? He's going to be one that I will be watching very, very closely. Now let's move on to the next one. We've got the running back room. This is a room I feel like several people are going to be concerned about, right? Just because we have a few guys that are banged up, but it does sound like they're getting healthy at the right time heading into fall camp. So over the top, we got to start off with Dylan Sampson. He should have a great year. I think he averaged 5.7 yards per carry last season. And this is his moment. This is his time to be that guy, to be the bell cow. How does he respond? I think that he will respond very well to it. And people, again, I just kind of sleeping on him. He has I love his game. I think that he does a great job coming out of the backfield, making catches. He can make people miss. He can hit those home runs. I just want to see him kind of pick it up a little bit as far as pass protection goes. I don't think he's going to be getting too many reps in fall camp. We got to make sure that he's healthy. He might just be doing a whole bunch of watching, probably, conditioning types of stuff. But I would say that he's probably going to be the most productive player inside of this room. Now let's talk about the sophomores, Cam Seldon, Khalifa Keith, and Deshaun Bishop. I love this class. And I think that Cam Seldon is going to be maybe, the second most productive running back on this entire team whenever it's all said and done. But we'll have to see when he's going to come back, right? I think that he is ahead of schedule as far as his rehab goes. Sounds like he'll probably be running around some out there at practice starting off tomorrow. But when is he going to be getting full contact? That's the biggest question. If he can get some contact, I would say the final week of fall camp, then you have to like his chances of being able to play versus NC State. But I would just suggest not to rush him back because it's a very long season. The Oklahoma game is the target point for me. If he's back by the Oklahoma game, then we are in very good shape. If he comes back by the NC State game, hey, it could be even better. So Khalifa Keith is going to be more of the short yardage back. I like him a lot. He's a bigger guy. Looks like he was running harder in spring practice. I want to see him continue to build off of that in fall camp. And I think that he will. We'll see what happens throughout the entire season. But I would expect for him to be pretty productive. He'll probably get, maybe 5 to 6 touchdowns in some short yardage situations. Hopefully he'll be able to, get us some first downs also in some short yardage situations. Now, Deshaun Bishop, I believe, to start the season off is going to be running back number 2. He's probably, the most versatile out of the ones that are here for us to, actually choose from, maybe outside of Peyton Lewis. But I think that Deshaun Bishop, obviously being that veteran, week 1, he should be number 2 coming off the bench right there behind Dylan Sampson. And I think he's going to have a very, very productive year. I think he's going to be able to hit some home runs behind a great offensive line. But now going on to Peyton Lewis as the true freshman, what does he give you? What is he going to be bringing to the table? I'm very excited to see that because he couldn't go in spring. But now we can see how this running back, rotation is actually going to shape up. It could end up being Peyton Lewis at number 2 to start the season off. And I think that, as far as an upside, it's Peyton Lewis, and it's definitely got to be Cam Seldon, in my opinion, for the highest ceilings. But, man, if we can have everyone inside of this room going at the highest level, then we're going to have a very, very good season, y'all. No question about it. Now, let's move on to the next one, and we got the cornerback room. This is another position group I feel like people have some big question marks with, but in my opinion, I love our 2 starters, okay? Jamal McCoy and Ricky Gibson, we talk about them so much. They're going to be shutdown guys. It doesn't matter if it's man-to-man coverage, if it's zone coverage. I also love the way that they get off the blocks, come up and make tackles. I think that they will be very productive. Who will be the most productive out of these 2, though? It's hard for me to call it. I think I have to see a little bit more, but I would definitely say that we should see more interceptions, from this duo than we've seen in the past few seasons on this team. That's just my opinion. I think that they will make some plays, especially with the crazy pass rush and them being in good positions. And maybe they don't always make those interceptions because a lot of times whenever you make interceptions as a cornerback, you're typically in zone coverage, but I think that we will be playing more man-to-man just because it fits their skill set. It's going to help our defense as a whole. But we also have Jalen McMurray. We also have Jordan Matthews. And I would even say maybe Caleb Beasley and Marcus Gorey could be fighting for that number 3 spot. Now, y'all can also see I have Christian Charles and Christian Harrison on this list. I just put them over here primarily because, well, number one, they can play anywhere inside of our secondary. But, the cornerback room looked a little bit light. So I just added them over here because there is a chance that maybe they get added to this room officially due to the lack of bodies right here. But, whenever you talk about who's going to be the third and fourth cornerbacks, you really have to like Jalen, you have to like Jordan, two guys with good size. I think that they play the game the right way. The biggest thing I'm going to be looking for from both of these two players is stand on top of the routes, not getting beat deep. How much more have they improved, from springtime to now? That's going to be the first thing that I want to see out of them. But I do expect for them to have great seasons as well. I feel like they can also play man-to-man coverage, especially Jordan Matthews. I think that Jalen is a little bit more of a, I would say sort of a like zone corner, maybe cover 3 corner, but he can also play man. So Colin Brazzell, who is Chris Brazzell's younger brother, I believe he's going to be in this room. Now he's about 6'2", 6'3", if I'm not mistaken. So he could be kind of like that dark horse inside of this room that just comes out of nowhere and really surprises everyone. So we'll see what happens just as far as who's looking the best inside this room, who's going to be the most consistent. I believe will be getting the most playing time. But again, I feel like this room will be a lot more productive than it has been over the past couple of seasons. Now, let's talk about the offensive line. There's several players right here. I just want to say this and get this out of the way. I don't think that Cooper Mays, Spraggs, or John Campbell will be getting too many reps in fall camp. I just don't think it's necessary now. Whenever you talk about Dane Davis, Andre Carrick, and Jackson Lampley, they probably will be getting a good amount of reps because they're still kind of fighting to see who's going to be the starter at left guard. And I really believe that battle is between Jackson Lampley, Andre Carrick. Now it sounds like Vyson Lane could be another one that the staff is going to look at the left guard position, and also Sham Umarov. So there's several bodies there. What does Vyson Lane give you at left guard, and what the heck happened with him playing at center? That could be a big time issue because if he can't back up Cooper Mays, we all know how detrimental that can be to our team. Right there, behind Vyson Lane would be William Satterwhite and Max Anderson. Those are two true freshmen. How much have they how much have they come along from spring to this point in fall? But I do think that, if we had to have a backup center from for week 1, it would be Dane Davis. So that does make you feel a little bit better, but there is a question mark for me with the backup center. So I will be watching that very closely. And also the left guard battle, I'll be watching that. I also want to see, how does Aiden Bustle look? Because he's a guy, at backup right guard. How is he coming along? I loved his film coming out of high school. I thought that he would be one of the best offensive linemen in the 2023 class. He just hasn't gotten on the field just yet. But has he come along enough that we trust him, or could he even be a guy that maybe pushes to be a starter at the left guard spot? Okay, I believe that he's going to be battling some true freshmen for the backup right guard spot. We've got Max Anderson, who I think could definitely play over there, and Gage Ginther. So, again, how do all these true freshmen look? And let's talk about Bennett Warren and Jeremiah Hurd. Also, Trevor Duncan, he's not a true freshman, he's a sophomore, but he did just make the transition from the defensive line to the offensive line playing a tackle. You have to love the size and the length of all of these players. I think especially Jeremiah Hurd, I might be the most excited to see him in fall camp than I am for anybody else, because we didn't get to see a whole lot of his high school film clips like that. So I think that he could end up being a guy that, maybe is going to be a huge, huge surprise inside of that tackle room. But sounds like Bennett Warren has come a long way. Sounds like his, body composition is looking a whole lot better. So how does he look out there? I feel like next season he could be fighting for that right tackle starting spot right there with a guy like David Sanders. So, the offensive line, y'all, obviously it's very, very deep, but several battles to watch in that one. And the great thing about, these veterans getting that, taking that time off is that these younger guys will get more and more reps, and it should help us to build up some more depth inside of this room. I think that we should be very, very productive. Also, I almost forgot to talk about Lance Hurd. Of course, we had to talk about him, the, all-star transfer from LSU, playing at left tackle. How does he look? Because in spring, I felt like he was a little bit out of shape. Has he come along as far as being more acclimated to our system, going with the tempo? That's going to be huge because we're going to need him to be ready to rock and roll from week 1. And then how many reps does he get? Do you need to see too much of it? I think that will all depend on what kind of shape he's in. Now, let's move on to the defensive tackle room. This is another very, very deep room. Up at the top, well, we got Big E, we got Big O, Bryson Easton, Omar Norman Lott. Those guys are studs. They're veterans. And I love the fact that they've, it looks like they've been recreating their bodies. Now, Big E, I think he was a little bit overweight. As of maybe like a month or so ago, he was up to like 340. I believe that the staff wants him down closer to about 330. So was he able to cut that weight, and how much does that affect how he's going to be playing in fall camp? So that's something to definitely keep a close eye out on. But yeah, I expect for that group to be extremely productive. Who would be the most productive inside of this room as far as sacks go? Man, it's going to be tough. I'm going to say it's between Bryson Easton and Omar Norman Lott. Now, Omar Norman Lott had, I believe, 5.5 sacks last season. He could get even more than that this year. Just all depends on how he's taking advantage of his opportunities, because we're going to rotate a lot inside of this room, and that's a great thing. But Omar Norman Lott has gained some weight. He's already extremely twitchy. I said, hey, if he gains just a little bit more weight all of a sudden, I mean, what the heck are you going to do with him? I think Bryson Easton also gained weight. So, Big O and Big E, they're not much of sack guys, but they're going to be very productive. I think just as far as stopping that run, maybe we'll see some tackles made in the backfield, tackles for loss, things like that. But let's move on to the juniors, and we've got Jackson Moy and Jamal Wallace. So those are the transfer guys, and I think that Jackson Moy will be very productive. He actually reminds me a lot of an Omar Norman Lott, but I think he might be a step or two behind him in twitchiness, but he is still a very, very twitchy player. He's got a perfect frame to play the 3 technique. And then Jamal Wallace, what does he give you? Because watching his film, you can tell that the level of competition that he saw coming from his junior college just wasn't great. And he was playing like at end. It looked like he was too big to be playing at end. So it was hard for me to get a gauge. I think he was expecting to be playing in our system, but now I believe that he understands he's going to be playing at defensive tackle. But he's a guy that, put on like 100-something pounds during COVID. So he should still have a whole lot of twitchiness to his game. He could end up being someone that is another surprise, just inside of this room alone. Now, let's talk about these sophomores, because David Hobbs and Nathan Robinson are 2 dogs. They're 2 studs. David Hobbs had a really good season last year as a true freshman, and I think he was probably playing somewhere around 285 to 290 pounds. Now he's up over 300 pounds. How much better is he going to look in the rotation this season? I think he's going to be very, very impressive. And then Nathan Robinson, 6'6", long arms, pushing that pocket back. I think he's going to be another guy that could be making, several big plays for us this season. And we don't have any true freshmen in this class. That's a big part of the reason that we've been so defensive tackle heavy in the 2025 class. But yeah, I'm expecting for this room to be extremely productive and to have a lot of success this season. Now, let's move on to the tight end room. And we'll be starting off with Holden Staes, because I heard that he's been getting most of the first team reps in off-season workouts. But Holden Staes, coming from Notre Dame, very, very balanced tight end, might be the most balanced tight end on this team. 6'5", 250, maybe over 250 pounds at this point. I mean, he looks like he's really big. He's noticeably bigger than he was whenever he transferred in. So you love to see that. But yeah, he should do a great job at the point of contact blocking. Think that he looked good doing that in spring. But also he can go out, he runs good routes. He has good hands. He has good straight line speed. But how much has his weight gain slowed him down, or has it made him even faster? We'll see what happens with that. But let's also talk about the sophomore, Ethan Davis. That's my dog. I think that he's going to have a really, really productive season. And I would not be surprised to see him have the most productive year. Now, he's going to have to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. Can he stay healthy? If he does, he's going to be a star in this league. I can guarantee you that. But he's also about 6'5", 250 pounds. He's more of a wide receiver threat, but he's going to have to block inside of this system. I actually like what I saw from him in spring. It, just looked like he's figuring things out as far as, just the body placement and playing with that thumb. So he's going to be another good one. But we also have Miles Kitselman, who I think has been running with the threes. And that's not because he can't ball, because he is a baller. Another 6'5", 250+ guy inside of this room. And he will be more of the blocking player. But at the same time, he can also run really good routes. He has good hands. He's a veteran. And I think that he's going to contribute a lot to this team this season. Hopefully we can rotate 3 tight ends this year. That's what I'm looking forward to the most. Because I don't know that Coach Heupel has ever done that. Maybe he's rotated 3 in some small spurts, but this will be the first time that he has 3 true tight ends that he can rotate, and actually 4, because Charlie Browder looked good in spring. Will he continue to look good? But we'll see what the rotation looks like. I think that's the biggest question mark for me in fall camp, and also just heading into the season. Now let's talk about this linebacker room. We're going to start off up at the top with Keenan Pili. We just dropped that video yesterday, and I think that some people missed the point of what I was saying. I'm not trying to say that Keenan Pili is Al Wilson or that he's necessarily going to be Al Wilson, because you can't play like Big Al did these days. That would be a penalty on almost every single play. But as far as, looking at the results of, what Al Wilson did on a play in and play out basis and what he meant to a championship team, that's more the comparison that I'm trying to make. Can Keenan Pili mean, what Al Wilson meant to the 98 team, to this year's team? Okay, that was the point. And I think that he could, because Al Wilson made big time plays, whether he's forcing fumbles, picking up fumbles, or getting interceptions, or just, being an enforcer on the defense to, make the offense be afraid, to intimidate the offense. I see a whole lot of those same traits and characteristics in Keenan Pili's game, in today's football, because he can make all the plays. He's sideline to sideline. He does play with that edge. And again, it can't be as much of an edge as Al Wilson had, because that would be illegal today. But he does enforce and inflict pain, and he does play that bully ball. And I could see him getting interceptions. Going to be great in pass coverage, going to be beautiful in run support. Some people are saying that you don't think that he has SEC speed, but he's going to be a starting linebacker for our team in the SEC. He for sure has SEC speed. That's not even a question. And I don't know what it is, but it's something about Keenan Pili that people just sleep on him. Even our own staff, whenever he transferred in, from BYU, they were shocked. They said, wow, we didn't know that he was this sort of good. But he could, I would say, maybe he's probably like the second fastest linebacker inside of that entire room. I would say right behind like Arion Carter. Like, he's up there. He can run. He's a really good player. But I think that it all starts with him. We're going to go as far as he does go. If he can stay healthy, then yes, we should have a very, very special year. But let's also talk about these sophomores, Arion Carter, Jeremiah Telander, and Jalen Smith. And I'm actually going to start off with Jalen Smith. He's gained a little bit too much weight. I hope that he cut it. I'm just talking about as far as spring practice when he just looked way too slow. So hopefully he's kind of recreated his body and gone back to playing with speed, because that was his game coming out of high school, right? Like, we saw him and we said, this is a guy that could, be like a spy on quarterbacks and do a lot of different things, because he looked like a great athlete. But he's going to have to get back to playing with that speed if he wants to contribute this season. Now, Arion Carter, I could say the exact same thing as a true freshman. He had gained too much weight. He's noticeably lighter. Okay, I think he's down to 234. I want to say last year he was up over 240 playing weight, but now he's cut, I would say, probably 8 to 10 pounds. And he's looked good. People can't stop raving about him. If you just watch any clips of the off-season stuff, he looks really good there. Jeremiah Telander, who I think played the best out of all of the linebackers in this class last season, he should be able to build off of what he did last year. So y'all can already tell that we have a lot of depth inside of this room. I'm just curious to see who's going to ultimately win the starting spot right next to Keenan Pili. Is it going to be an Arion Carter? Is it Jeremiah Telander, Jalen Smith? Or is it going to be Caleb Perry, who is one of the veteran guys inside of this room? I think that he has a good chance to do it. He just needs to play with a little bit more dog, a little bit more fight. That's the only thing with him. He seems like he's a really nice guy off the field, but he has to keep in mind that you have got to turn it on the field. So hopefully he gets there, because he's a great athlete. I mean, that's another tall, big, long-rangey guy. He's about Keenan Pili size. He's not even as big as Keenan Pili. Keenan Pili is the biggest linebacker inside of this room. Let me just throw that out there. But, he could. I think that Caleb Perry could end up being another surprise inside of this room. Now, let's talk about the true freshman, Edwin Spillman. Love what I saw from him in spring. How much does he build off of that? Also, we have Jordan Burns. This will be our first time seeing him. How does he look? Because we thought that maybe he could end up being the better of the two coming out of high school. But we'll see how things play out, right? Obviously, Edwin Spillman has had more time in this system, and I think that he will play, some this season. I don't know if I want to say a lot just yet, but I do feel like he can get rotated in. I trust him. Obviously he has to get things figured out, but he's a really smart kid, so I don't think that that's going to be too much of an issue. Again, y'all, I think that this room is very deep, and we should expect for them to be more productive. As far as who the most productive player will be inside of this room, though, because I did not get to that, I'm actually going to go with Arion Carter. And the reason for that is Keenan Pili is a guy that we kind of watched some in the clips that we saw yesterday. He's going to be the one that is taking up those blocks a lot. He's going to be kind of like that point man, which is typically, like what a Mike does. And I think that, in our system, Arion Carter will be playing more of that will, where he can kind of roam free. And I think that he is going to be a little bit of a better athlete than Keenan Pili. So expect for him to maybe be the most productive. But I mean, it's hard to call it, because I think that JT is a dog. I can see him being very, very productive as well. I can see, again, Caleb Perry stepping up and just coming kind of like out of nowhere and having a very productive season as well. But I'm going to go ahead with Arion Carter, final answer for this room. So let's move on to the star and safety room. And this is another room that people have had several question marks about. I would say out of any room on this entire team, I have the most question marks about this one. Who would the starters be? I believe Andre Turrentine or Kobe Thomas, or Kobe Thomas and John Slaughter, or John Slaughter and Andre Turrentine, whatever, however you want to do it. It's going to be a combination of those three, in my opinion. So I'm going to start off with the guy that I feel like needs to prove the most. That's John Slaughter. I'm not quite sure why he wouldn't be more of a solidified starter. Obviously, Andre and Kobe are the elders. I think that Kobe Thomas is going to be locked in as a starter. I just think it's hard to get around that. But can John Slaughter figure out the plays? I feel like that's the main reason that he isn't being mentioned more as a potential starter, is just not understanding what to do. We know that, Coach Martinez and Coach Banks want the veterans that know what to do, that won't just bust on coverages. So that's going to be what I'm looking forward to, or looking for the most from John Slaughter in fall camp. I think that he will be very productive this season, especially in tackling and just enforcing on defense. He'll probably end up being a fan favorite before it's all said and done. Now, as far as Andre Turrentine goes, I love his game, especially kind of towards the end of last season. And if you look at spring camp, looks like he's being more physical. That was my biggest question mark, is he looks good in coverage, but can he come up, or will he come up and be more physical at the point of contact? He's going to have to show me that. I'm looking forward to seeing him prove me wrong, or maybe prove me right, about being more physical this season. Now, Kobe Thomas, I love what he's going to be bringing to this team from MTSU. You can tell that he loves Tennessee, and you can also tell that he's going to be an enforcer. How does he look in pass coverage? Seen him get a pick six at some point in spring practice, but everyone's just going to have to sharpen up, because this is an open competition, and I don't think that it's anywhere near solidified. Now, we also have Will Brooks, who I actually like a little bit more playing at star or playing at linebacker. That's just my opinion, than playing at safety. And the reason for that is, that straight line speed stuff, I think, could really hurt him. Now, he is a good athlete, but I don't think that he's an SEC starting caliber safety type of an athlete. So that's my only knock right there. But I mean, he plays hard. He knows what to do. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits into this entire rotation. Would the staff try to maybe move him around to some different places just to get him out on the field? We also have Christian Harrison and Jordan Thomas. Now, I think that Christian Harrison is probably going to be playing a little bit more at star. But, what happens if a guy like Jordan Thomas gets moved to safety, right? Like, what's that competition look like at star now? Because Jordan Thomas, I believe, would be the starter at the star position. But let's talk about Boo Carter. Let's talk about Christian Harrison. Who would get the start right there? I feel like that's pretty good depth. That's two players that you should trust. I love Boo Carter. I'm expecting a huge season out of him, not just on defense, but definitely on special teams. He's going to make some plays. Like, we know that without question. And then we also have Edris Farouk. I want to see how he's come along from spring practice. He should be a guy that, we trust at least on special teams. But if he could step up, son, right? Like, if he could be a guy that emerges out of fall camp, we say, hey, listen, Edris Farouk showed us something. Now, we think that he could come out and he could actually play at some point this season. That's huge for the depth of this room. Okay, so we just need for everyone here to step up. But if I had to go out on a limb and say, who do I feel like the most productive player is going to be, let's say inside of the star room, I'm going to go with Boo Carter. I'm just going to go ahead and call it. I think that Boo Carter could end up actually at some point getting the start at the star position. And if we can't get the rest of the safety thing figured out, I could see Jordan Thomas making the move there. Or maybe you move Boo Carter to safety and you let Jordan Thomas keep on playing star. But, I think that there's still several question marks coming out of that room. So there's a lot for us to keep an eye out on. Now, let's move to the final room right here. We have the wide receivers, and obviously Squirrel White and Brew McCoy will be starters, but who's going to be the third guy that starts? Is it going to be Dante Thornton, Chris Brazo? Is it Chaz Nimrod or Caleb Webb? Are they all playing in that same position? I think that competition is what we're going to be watching for the most. Also, a lot of people want to know, how is Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley coming along? I think that, they both should be able to play a lot this season. I could say especially Mike Matthews, but also Braylon Staley, because listen, Squirrel White's going to need a break sometime at the slot position. And Braylon Staley is a guy that I feel like people are kind of overlooking at this point in the process. And it could be just because he didn't play a whole lot in the orange and white game, but he is a star. I think that he's every bit as good as Mike Matthews is. And I know that that's saying a lot, but I definitely believe that. I've seen that just from watching him play. Now, who else do we have in here? Because, there are a few people, if you look at the sophomores, like I'm going to say Nate Spillman. I also want to talk about Nathan Leacock. Those two guys, it's going to be a huge fall for them. if they don't make it out onto the field, could they be entering into the transfer portal, once it's all said and done? So this is going to be huge. I'm watching them very, very closely. But as far as who's going to end up being the most productive player in this room, I'm going to have to go with a couple of different categories. So as far as receptions go, I'm going to go out on a limb right here and say Brew McCoy. I think that we try to force feed Brew a little bit more than we did before. Also, there's that California connection with him and Nico. So I could see him getting the most targets and catches. As far as yards go, I would say maybe Squirrel White. I think that, he's going to be very dynamic with the football in his hand, but he should also be getting behind the coverages a lot. So maybe you could put him in there for touchdowns as well. But I'm going to go with Chris Brazzell for touchdowns just because I think that he can score from the middle of the field, but also down in the red zone. He's going to be a major, major threat. He's got long arms, and, he can go up and high point that football. So there's a lot to be excited about inside of this room. Again, I don't think I can emphasize this enough. Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb are two players that I feel like we can't overlook, we can't sleep on this year, and I am expecting for them to also be very productive. I wouldn't be surprised if we rotate more wide receivers this season than we had before. I think that you almost have to, but it should be a whole lot of fun for sure this season. So from top to bottom, y'all, I absolutely love this team. There's a lot to be excited about. And, it sounds like they are excited because you hear the players talking about winning championships. The coaches are kind of hinting towards that as well. So everyone's playing and, coming out and talking with a whole lot of confidence. But now it's go time, okay? Now it's time to go out, show, improve, get the depth chart right, make sure that we're pushing one another, but not, going over the limit. We make sure that we stay healthy. Some people just don't even need to get out on the field, period, unless they're kind of like an on-the-field coach or something like that. But I think that this is going to be a very special year, y'all. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. And thank you, as always, for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.